Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about health anxiety. In the last couple of years we've understandably seen a huge rise in those suffering with health anxiety, and in this video that you guys have requested I'll give you my take on it and my top 7 tips for getting the other side of those concerns. I'm Tim Box and this is Health Anxiety, everything you need to know to beat it. So welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time, I'm Tim Box, I'm a mind coach, and for the last 12 years or so I've been working with people to help them overcome all sorts of emotional and psychological issues, and in particular helping people to get control of anxiety. I put a call out on my social media recently and asked you guys what you want me to cover in my next videos, and one of the things that was mentioned most was health anxiety. So in this episode, I'm going to give you a breakdown of what health anxiety is, how and why it manifests, and what we can do to ultimately get control of it. In recent times, I've seen a lot of people who are struggling with health anxiety, also known as hypochondria or a fear of illness. This is where we start to become so worried that we're ill or that we might become ill that those thoughts start to take over our life. This increased focus and concern can at times even start to cause physical symptoms, thus giving us more to worry about and initiating that anxiety cycle that I spoke about in a recent video. And I'll put the link to that one in the description below. We can of course attribute the recent spike in cases of health anxiety to the emergence of a global pandemic. Many people have experienced escalated levels of anxiety for the first time in their life as a result of that. But health anxiety is perhaps more common than you might think. Whilst it's known to affect roughly 4 to 5% of the population, experts suspect it may be vastly underreported as an issue, and the figure could be closer to around 12%. Some of the behavioural signs of health anxiety include repeatedly checking our body for signs of illness, such as lumps or any change in sensations in certain areas. We might start asking others for reassurances about our health, whether we look or seem ill. We might also find ourselves spending a little too much time researching health issues on the internet, and we might become excessively uncomfortable listening to others talk about serious illness. Another common trait is that when we do go to see the doctor or have any medical tests done, we can't quite shake the feeling that they missed something. So, what's actually going on here, and how do we get control of it? Becoming overly focused on our health can happen for a number of reasons. Perhaps we have symptoms that we currently can't explain. Perhaps someone close to us has developed illness and this heightened awareness of it has caused us to worry. Perhaps there's a global health concern on the news right now. For whatever reason it begins, it can quite easily escalate thanks to the amount of information available to us online these days, and how easy it is to share scary health stories on social media and to do our own uneducated research on Google. The problem really starts when we start to trigger something I refer to as the magnifying glass effect. So, I used to go to one of those schools where you had to wear a school uniform, and at the start of the summer term, one of the more popular, hilarious pranks was to surreptitiously stand next to someone who wasn't paying attention and use a magnifying glass to burn a hole into their brand new tie. Having this tiny little hole in your tie at one point felt a bit like a rite of passage you had to go through. Now, in the same way that focusing the sun with a magnifying glass can cause damage, when we focus our attention on our physical health, it's very easy to get so pinpoint in our self-analysis that we start to perceive and even generate actual physical symptoms. It's not uncommon for those that are dealing with health anxiety to be incredibly aware of any changes in their heart rate or their breathing. Any slight rise or fall in their body temperature gets noticed, and they become hyper aware of any aches and pains. All this does is create tension. This then initiates our threat response and thus potentially causes the very physical reaction we're checking for. You've probably all heard of the placebo effect, when someone with a headache gets given a sugar pill, told it's a painkiller, and their pain goes away. Well, there's also this thing called the nocebo effect. This is where we anticipate negative effects of something like a medical procedure, and what results is what doctors call somatization of symptoms. This means our hyper-awareness and excessive focus has us literally imagining discomfort or pain into existence. A doctor I once spoke to estimated that roughly 20% of all patients he saw were experiencing purely somatic symptoms. Yes, there are traditional symptoms that excessive anxiety causes that are associated with the stress or fight or flight response. But believe me, if there's one thing I've learned from my years as a remedial hypnotist, your mind is capable of manifesting as real to you any potential symptom you can imagine. A few years ago, somebody I knew was experiencing severe headaches, and whilst he suspected it was due to a particularly stressful period he was going through at work, he wondered if it might be more sinister than that and feared a brain tumour. His research online only strengthened this fear. He made the appointment with the doctor and had some tests done. In the few weeks between the tests being carried out and waiting for the results, his headaches became much worse. They were now occurring daily and were absolutely crippling. He'd become certain there was something very wrong. Eventually, he got the test results back, and to his surprise and relief, they came back clear. The effect on his headaches was almost instantaneous, and from that day onwards, they calmed down. These days, he simply makes sure he doesn't allow himself to become too stressed at work and no longer experiences the headaches. In that instance, the regularity and severity of the headaches had been entirely created by his own concerns about them. What this means is that for whatever reason we started becoming concerned about our health, it's really easy to get caught in the loop of creating more symptoms to worry about. So how do we avoid this loop and calm any potential anxiety about our health? Well, here are my top tips for getting back in control and mitigating the effects of health anxiety. The first thing to do with any anxiety response is to acknowledge and accept it. Resisting the way we feel sets up inner conflict and gives rise to greater anxiety. Accepting that this is how we feel and nothing about those feelings means we're broken or malfunctioning is a huge step towards calming and minimizing our anxiety response. Yes, it might be easier said than done when health anxiety can be a horrible thing to have to go through, but remember, acceptance isn't about resigning ourselves to feeling this way forever. It's about accepting that this is how we feel right now. It's incredibly tempting to reach for the internet when it comes to any instances of worry or concern. After all, knowledge is our friend, right? Well, yes it is, but remember, an anxious mind is scanning for threat, and as a result, whatever you research when in an anxious state will inevitably end up with you focusing on the worst case scenarios and getting a distorted perspective. This will only cause higher levels of anxiety and simply exacerbate the response you're trying to mitigate. Anxiety is your mind calling you to action in the face of perceived threat. So sitting doing nothing but ruminating will just cause anxiety to increase. Taking some form of positive action will potentially allow that part of your mind to feel appeased that something is being done. So taking steps to look after your general health and well-being is a great start. Also, don't feel like you can't pick up the phone and actually seek medical help if you feel your concerns warrant some attention. There's nobody in a better position to calm your fears than a medical professional. They'll do a much better job than Google can. But if you're going to do that, you'll need to apply tip 4, which is trust the professionals. It's extremely common for the people I see who are experiencing health anxiety to talk about how they've lost faith in their doctor or the medical profession in general because they just can't shake the feeling that the person they saw didn't really listen properly or wasn't paying enough attention to one of your concerns, and in some way they missed something. Please remember that doctors study for a long time to gain an extremely high level of knowledge about their subject. And even though they might not be experts at gaining rapport in a 10-minute consultation, they are experts at diagnosing ailments and treating them. To go back to the story about my friend with the headaches, his anxiety was calmed because he got a diagnosis from a doctor. He could have decided the doctor must be wrong or must have missed something because, after all, he felt ill and had already Googled his symptoms. His health anxiety story could have continued, but he chose to stop it there, trust his diagnosis, and get on with living his life. In the same way it's a bad idea to hit Google when we're in an anxious state, it's also a bad idea to pay too much mind to the healthcare horror stories we get told by friends. Health anxiety is often fueled by stories that we either read on the internet or we get told by others, because our focus is inevitably on the negative implications of such stories. Most of us have heard tales about people with seemingly innocuous symptoms that went undiagnosed and that then turned into a life-threatening condition, or about someone that went to see the doctor and got misdiagnosed with disastrous results. This type of hearsay just makes our worst fears suddenly seem valid and our anxiety about health seem justified. But here's the thing, The only reason we hear these types of stories is because firstly, those instances are so unusual, and secondly, people like to exaggerate and embellish stories to make themselves seem more interesting to the person listening. We've all at some point retold a story that we heard from someone else, even though we don't quite remember the exact details and have no way of establishing whether or not it actually happened in the way we were told in the first place. Pause for a moment and allow the more logical side of your thinking to realise it's much more likely we can trust a medical profession than the horror story we heard about a friend of a friend's wife's brother's work colleague. When it comes to health anxiety, it's all about the what ifs and the possible futures. Waiting for a doctor's appointment or the results of our medical tests can be agonising if we indulge in rumination and spend our time and energy pondering what the possible negative outcome might be. This is of course understandable. Your mind is focusing on this stuff because it perceives potential threat on the horizon. However, your mind isn't at its best when engaged in thoughts that have no potential action. We just end up spending all our time and energy thinking about things that are outside of our control. Put your focus back on the things that you can control, the day-to-day stuff. Maintaining a normal life routine allows us elements of familiarity and safety, even in the midst of the uncertainty, and allows us regular respite from our concerns. It also encourages the more anxious parts of your thinking to treat these thoughts with less importance. It's a really common trap to fall into, to put our life on hold until we get the other side of any anxiety issue. We cancel plans and stop our life in its tracks so we can focus on fixing our anxiety. I can't handle that right now, I'll be able to do that when I feel better. Whilst fully committing and doing everything we can to reorder our thinking is always a good plan, interrupting our life to do it simply gives those thoughts and feelings disruptive power over us. But if we keep on with our day-to-day activities and continue to pursue our goals, we put less focus on our intangible concerns. With less focus on the things we're anxious about, our anxiety inevitably diminishes. In the vast majority of instances, our health concerns prove completely unfounded. And the worst thing about the whole process was how much we worried about what might happen and how we put our life on hold to accommodate those concerns. As human beings, we do pretty well at dealing with challenges as we meet them because it's what we've been doing every day. We only really struggle when we spend too much time and energy attempting to foresee the future and predict those challenges. Now, of all the challenges we might get anxious about, our own health is an entirely understandable one. Health is important. You could argue everything we have is built on our health and well-being. But this doesn't mean it should dictate our every thought and concern. Yes, our mind is geared towards keeping us alive, and therefore will make sure any health threat looms large in our awareness. But always remember, we're not put here simply to survive. We're here to pursue happiness. Our focus is much better employed on the things that enrich our existence and enhance our experiences of our time on this planet, however long or short that might be. I'm reminded at this point of one of my favourite quotes from the American writer John Shedd. "A ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are built for." When you have health concerns, it's okay to acknowledge these concerns and realise they come from a part of you that cares about you. But remind yourself that in most cases, the appropriate action involves little more than a phone call or a visit to see someone, which needn't take up that much of your attention or focus, and certainly doesn't require or benefit from excessive rumination. Guys, I hope this video has been of value. If you have any questions, then put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Please hit that thumbs up button if you like what I do, and why not subscribe to the channel for weekly mind management tips and anxiety advice. But that's it for now. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach. Remember, always be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.